Welcome to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, where faith and liberty meet. Our host is Dave Garrison from Ohio Christian University, a longtime Fortune 100 company top executive and a former U.S. congressional candidate from Texas. Our goal for the Faith and Liberty Talk Show is to give you an opportunity to listen to interviews and discussions with significant authorities and experts on subjects related to Christians engaging in the civil and political arena. The mission of the show is to give you real information and not sound bites that you can really use. We have a website for the show, faithandliberty.org. At this website, you can obtain more information about the show, our guests, subscribe to our newsletter, and become a friend of the show, and like us on our Faith and Liberty Facebook page. You can also access all of our previous shows. Please keep in mind that the Faith and Liberty Talk Show exists only with the generosity and support of our listeners. If our show is of value to you, we would appreciate you visiting our website, faithandliberty.org, and donating to the show. Now, let's begin today's show. Thank you for joining us.
Today we have the great privilege of having Congressman Alan West with us, and I find it remarkable if you don't know who he is, but I'll give you a little bio information, listeners, so you know why I've looked so forward to talking with him. Congressman West, former lieutenant colonel in the Army, spent 22 years in the U.S. Army, and also served in a number of combat zones. You were in war zones a couple of times, weren't you, Congressman?
Yeah, that's correct. Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan as a civilian military advisor to the Afghan Army.
And I think you and I have a mutual friend in General Joe Robles, and I think he was tank commander under Schwarzkopf during the first Gulf War.
No, he was an
artilleryman. Okay.
So, he was an artillery officer. As a matter of fact, when I first got to the 1st Infantry Division Artillery Unit, he was the commander of the division artillery, and just a great man, very knowledgeable artilleryman.
Yes, he is. And now the CEO of USAA, in whom we're both members.
Yeah, absolutely.
Recently, I think like almost every time I turn on the television, Fox, I see you on as a contributor. How long have you been doing that role?
We're coming up on 1 year as being a Fox News contributor. It's given me a great platform, as well as our website, alanbwest.com, to get our constitutional conservative message out.
Yes, and Congressman, we'll put links up to all the various books or organizations or anything we mentioned so that the listeners can stay informed. And you are married to Angela, and she has a Ph.D. What's it like living with a Ph.D.?
Well, it's interesting. She has an MBA and a Ph.D. She was a consultant on Wall Street when we met, and then she followed me out to Fort Riley, Kansas, where she went back to her alma mater, Kansas State University, to be a professor. And, stupid me, Southern boy, I figured if I get 2 master's degrees, that will equal her intellect with a Ph.D. That didn't work out so well.
I'll bet. Well, you have become a national figure loved by conservatives, evangelicals, the Tea Party. Why do you think that is?
You'd have to ask them. What I tell people is that I think that, doing what is right is easy. As a matter of fact, when I was at Fort Bragg, my Corps artillery commander, who retired, Major General Jeff Miller, he just simply said, leaders know what right looks like. And that's all that I try to do is speak from the heart, speak the truth, and is grounded in principles and truly our foundational documents and who we are as an American people. And I think that's what folks are looking for, are individuals who will say what needs to be said, not what they believe people want to hear based upon some poll or some marketing message, and really show that they are concerned about their future and their livelihood, not their own self-interest, or definitely not special interests.
I noticed recently you've called on the Republican Party to be more compassionate. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't want them to be more compassionate. I want them to take their message to every corner of America and to every community. I think when you go back and George W. Bush said, compassionate conservatism, what that ended up meaning was just, bigger spending. And that's not what we want. What we want as a movement, as a party, is to truly elevate the individuals and allow them to have their pursuit of happiness and not us try to guarantee a happiness. And we cannot be a lesser version of the Democrat Party. And I think that's where we have failed in some of the recent presidential election cycles and not making a clear delineation when it comes to philosophy of governance.
Oh, those are good points. Before we continue with a couple other questions that I think will be of interest to the listeners, we often ask our guests to explain a little bit of their spiritual journey. Can you do that with us for a moment?
Yeah, sure. Look, I was, brought up down south, so you learn college football fight songs and you learn all the spirituals and hymns at church. That's what the weekends were about, especially in the fall. But I was brought up in a United Methodist Church, 4th Street United Methodist Church on Boulevard in the old 4th Ward, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s neighborhood. My elementary school was right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. And so, faith and commitment to God and understand that there's a higher calling than just yourself has always been part of my life. I made my personal decision as a freshman at the University of Tennessee back in January of 1980. Does not say that I'm perfect, but it just says that I know from whence my blessings come. And currently we have been attending down here in Florida, Community Christian Church in Tamarack, Florida for the past 10 years, where our pastor is Scott Einan. My oldest daughter graduated from Archbishop McCarthy, and my youngest daughter attends a Christian school in West Palm Beach, because we believe that, your faith education is an important part of your character development.
In that vein, you're writing a new book that comes out on April 1st. I believe it's called The Guardian of the Republic.
That's correct. It kind of just tells, my story from, coming up in the inner city, the influences that my parents had on me, that the military had on me, some of the key leaders in the military that I knew. Then, we talk about, my philosophical, political beliefs and where they came from. And I go back and do a lot of great research and going back to Locke and Hobbes and Montesquieu and others to try to let people understand from whence this republic came and what I believe in. Then the challenges, the other philosophies, the other beliefs that are threatening this republic. I talk about what it means to be a black conservative and that this is not something new, but conservatism has always been in the black community. We just failed to properly articulate it for a while. And then I talk about my outlook for the future of this great country and this great republic, because I think that we are at a very critical tipping point. I mean, we can survive, but people are going to have to start making some real tough, educated decisions and not just fall, to the rhetorical messages that somehow seem to emanate really from both parties.
Since you said it that way, I'm going to ask you this question I was going to ask you a little later, and that is, are you optimistic about the direction of this country?
I'm always optimistic. As a matter of fact, I often tell people about the quote from Sir Winston Churchill, where he said, Americans can be counted on to do that which is right after they have exhausted all other means. So I think that we will come to our senses. I think that as I go around and listen to Americans and talk to Americans, they know that this is not right. They know it in their gut. You're always going to have a 35%, maybe even up to a 40% that really does want to sit around and allow government to run their lives and to, really control their destiny. But I don't think the American people want that. I think the American people don't want to listen to someone say, you can sit at home and get a subsidy check from the government and, pursue your own little interests, and we'll just kind of take care of you. Because if you're disincentivizing work in America, then what's going to happen in the long run? The government subsidy checks will stop coming, and this great experiment in liberty, freedom, and democracy will collapse. So, as a combat leader, I am always optimistic. I don't care if I'm in a firefight and I'm running out of ammunition. I'll do what Joshua Chamberlain did at Little Round Top the second day of Gettysburg. I'll fix bayonets and I'll find a way to carry the day.
That's fantastic. We'll return with our guest, Congressman Alan West, in a few moments after some messages from our sponsors. This is Dave Garrison, the host of the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. And before we get back with this week's guest, I wanted you to know that the Faith and Liberty Talk Show and Young America's Foundation, YAF, will hold a conservative women's conference for women and men on the campus of the Ohio Christian University on April 10th. The conference theme is Restore Our American Heritage and will feature a number of Fox News contributors and political activists, including Star Parker, Kate Obenshane, Chrisanne Hall, Ashley Pratt, and Hadley Heath. As the host of the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, I will be the master of ceremonies. There will be breakout sessions covering the fraud of hope and change, Liberty First, Restore America, how healthcare reform will affect millennials and the rest of us, and the war on women. For more information, please go to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show website at faithandliberty.org. Again, for more information, please go to the website faithandliberty.org. Hope to see you on April 10th at Ohio Christian University.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. After a short break to hear from our sponsor, Ohio Christian University, we will rejoin our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's guest.
Senator Rick Santorum, Dr. Ben Carson, and Dr. John Maxwell are coming to Ohio Christian University Monday, April 21st at 6 p.m. Get your tickets today at ohiochristian.edu for this riveting event. Tickets are going quickly, so secure yours now at ohiochristian.edu to meet Senator Rick Santorum, Dr. Ben Carson, and Dr. John Maxwell at Ohio Christian University on Monday, April 21st at 6 p.m. Made possible by Millwood Inc., The Computer Workshop, and Christian Healthcare Ministries.
Ohio Christian University is one of the fastest growing universities in the nation, offering undergraduate and graduate degree programs fully online in the areas of business, psychology, chemical dependency counseling, nursing, and ministry. You can earn an accredited, relevant, and affordable online degree, all from the comfort of your home. Now is the time to prepare for your future and earn your degree with Ohio Christian University. Call today at 855-OCU-GRAD or online at ocuonline.com.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, where faith and liberty meet. Now, back to the discussion with our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's wonderful guest.
You were the first African-American congressman elected in Florida since 1876. What did that mean to you?
It was an incredible thing. I mean, I was not running, for a historical moment. I was running to really get the people here in South Florida to know that, I was a person who was going to go to Washington, D.C. and stand up and fight for them. But when you think about, the fact that, Josiah T. Walls was that last black Republican member of the House, Congress, really, and you're the next one. I mean, you're in a history book. I mean, it's an incredible, mantra to carry, mantle to carry. And I don't want to see us go that long before you have the third one. And that's why we have an organization called the Allen West Guardian Fund that is really working hard to get more minority and military conservatives up to Washington, D.C., because I think those two groups are so severely underrepresented in the conservative movement.
Is that a super PAC or what is it?
No, it's just me. I mean, it's a continuation of the congressional leadership PAC that I had. Back in the 2012 election cycle, we supported 10 candidates. 7 of them are now members of the House of Representatives. And, we were very proud of that accomplishment. And I wanted to continue it. Continue it. And so we have already come out and endorsed Mia Love out in Utah, Dan Bongino up in Maryland, and Tom Cotton, who is one of the people that we assisted getting to Congress, and now he's going to be running for Senate over in Arkansas. We've recently come out in support of Shane Osborne, a former Navy aviator, lieutenant, who flew EP-3s, and he was the guy that saved the EP-3 and landed in China on the Hainan Island back some years ago, and withstood, I think, about 11 days of interrogation and did not provide the Chinese anything. So if you can stand up to Chinese interrogation for 11 days, you can certainly go up to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, you should be able to stand up to Nancy Pelosi, huh?
Oh, that's easy. I mean,
you did.
Yeah, that's quite easy. And you bring up a great point in that we have to have people that go to Washington, D.C., not concerned about re-election, but concerned about the Republic and concerned about doing the right things there. And, I am where God would have me to be, and I have an incredible platform that He has, so blessed me with that I can continue to stand up and fight for this great nation.
That's great. What would you say the takeaways have been for you, having been in Congress?
Well, I really believe that we have got to get to the point where we are solving problems and not just sitting around perpetuating these problems. I'll give you a case in point. We're $17.3 trillion in debt, and we just saw a clean raise of the debt ceiling. So that means another $1 trillion or so over the next year. And sooner or later, we're going to have to understand that, as Admiral Mullen said, who was the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that national debt is a national security issue. When we have China, owning 28% of our debt, when we have the Federal Reserve is the highest, holder of our debt because they keep, buying up our treasuries.
That's called printing money. Yeah.
Yeah, printing money to do it. I mean, that's what quantitative easing is. So the second and third order effects means that, you're devaluing your currency. America may not have the currency of record for the world. And then what happens after that is someone decides, well, we're going to raise, a couple of interest rate points on the net interest of your debt. So we've got to have people that solve problems and go to Washington, D.C. to do that. Not go to Washington, D.C. to be comfortable, not go to Washington, D.C. to, become part of a political elite class, and not go to Washington, D.C. to be a careerist. That's not what the Founding Fathers intended. So I think those were my key takeaways.
Well, one of the things that one of the quotes I often quote from Congressman J.C. Watts, who we've interviewed in the past, is he said, too many people go to Washington thinking it's a cesspool, and after
it ends up being a jacuzzi.
That's right. You've heard it too.
Yeah.
I think that is a great statement. And do you concur with that?
No, I absolutely concur with that. And, I think term limits is an important part of that. Our Founding Fathers, 1788, at the Virginia Ratifying Convention, George Mason said, nothing so greatly impels a man to regard the interests of his constituents than the certainty of returning to the general mass of the people from whence he was taken so that he can participate in their burdens. You need to come back and live under the laws that you created. And when you look around and see people that have been in Washington, D.C. 30, 40 years, Congressman Dingell from Michigan has been in Congress almost as long as I've been alive. That's not right.
One of the things that when I was running for Congress and people asked me about term limits, I'd say, yeah, I'm absolutely for term limits. But I tell you who I'd really like to have term limits, and that's bureaucrats.
Yeah, I think that's another important part of what we see happening is, when the president says he's got a pen and he's going to use it, you're talking about the growth of a bureaucratic state. And not the legislative state, not the way that our checks and balances and separation of powers are supposed to be working.
The rule of law.
That's a big concern. When you sit around and you look at all the regulations and that have been created just in this new year, 2014, and the amount of paperwork and man hours and costs to our businesses, most people don't know that these things are being done because it's not being done through legislative order, regular order. It's being done through executive order and regulatory fiat through the bureaucrat state. And so we got to fix that. We got to get that back on the right track.
Well, something that really troubles me, and I know it troubles you because you've written on it, and I saw a piece the other day with Charles Krauthammer, and he said that the president has circumvented Congress at least 15 times in issues such as immigration, climate change, now Obamacare, the DREAM Act, all sorts of stuff with this pen. And then this comment that could have possibly been a little bit taken out of context, where he said, as he was walking with, I guess, the French president, I can do anything I want because I'm president. What do you think of all that?
Well, the thing is, just dumb, stupid luck that he would say something so insidious as that as he's getting ready to go and, really break protocol and go to Jefferson's Terrace, which no one is allowed to do. And so he makes that comment about, as president, I can do what I want. But the exact same time that gets released, then you have the release of another, delay change for the employer mandate that says, if you got 50 to 99 employees, you don't have to comply with the employer mandate. If you have over 99 employees, you only have to provide insurance for 70%. Well, basically, his tongue-in-cheek comment ended up being the truth, that he is just doing what he wants. And we can't have a republic when we have an imperial monarch, when we have not rule of law and not governance, but we have rule by edict, and we have, the power of the pen, as he says. So something has to change. The Congress has to stand up to this. Unfortunately, Harry Reid is not going to challenge him. I mean, Harry Reid just changed the filibuster rules. But the House has to stand up. We need independent investigators. We need to have a select committee with subpoena powers on Benghazi. John Boehner's not bringing that up, even though he has about 183 signatures out of the House conference on that. So there are things like that we need to see happen.
Well, this evening I'm speaking to one of my favorite Tea Party groups, the Chillicothe, Ohio Tea Party group. Even though I'm from Texas, I'm up here at Ohio Christian University part of the year, and we do the talk show out of here. And one of the people there were telling me the other day that their employer, they have about 600 people, they dropped all of their health care because they calculated it was cheaper to pay the fine than to provide the wonderful health care. What would you say to the Chillicothe Tea Party about all this?
I would tell them that their voice is so important that they cannot be discouraged, that that's what the other side wants. I mean, as Catherine Engelbrecht said, they're trying to weaponize the IRS to get conservative grassroots movements to shut up. And even within the Republican Party, you have some elements that do not want to see the people, once again regain their power, even though they don't realize it was the people that put the House Republicans in the majority in 2010. So they've got to get out there. They have to educate the American electorate in Chillicothe. They need to be able to break it down in very simple terms to talk about what it was when President Obama came into office and what it is now. Because that comparative analysis, it just says it all. Whether you look at gas prices, you look at food stamps, poverty, you look at the debt, you look at the individual responsibility for the debt. I mean, all of those things. And like Ronald Reagan said, are you better off than you were, 4 years ago? I don't think many Americans can say yes.
Now, one part of my speech is trying to show them that some of the numbers and what they mean. And so this is where I'm getting to a question. When you were in Congress, did you run into the same thing that I've run into with any number of congressmen and women? Because it's one of my favorite questions. I'll ask them, can you read a financial statement? And the vast majority of them say they can't. Is that your same experience?
Well, I would tell you that, when you look at members of Congress, you got to ask yourself how many people have ever created a budget, had to adhere to a budget in their lives, how many people had to make a payroll, like you said, read a financial statement or prospectus. If they don't have, a semblance of understanding what is happening in the private sector, then they are making policies that really are going to have an adverse effect on the private sector. You look at the Obama administration, you think about the percentage of the Obama administration that has private sector experience. I think it's less than 5%. Mm-hmm. So what you have are academics who are up there, trying to enact theory. It sounds real good in the classroom, looks real pretty on a chalkboard, but when it comes to practical application, such as Obamacare, it just falls apart.
We'll return with our guest, Congressman Alan West, in a few moments after some messages from our sponsors. This is Dave Garrison, the host of the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. And before we get back with this week's guest, I wanted you to know that the Faith and Liberty Talk Show and Young America's Foundation, YAF, will hold a conservative women's conference for women and men on the campus of the Ohio Christian University on April 10th. The conference theme is Restore Our American Heritage and will feature a number of Fox News contributors and political activists, including Star Parker, Kate Obenshane, Chrisanne Hall, Ashley Pratt, and Hadley Heath. As the host of the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, I will be the master of ceremonies. There will be breakout sessions covering the fraud of hope and change, Liberty First, Restore America, how healthcare reform will affect millennials and the rest of us, and the war on women. For more information, please go to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show website at faithandliberty.org. Again, for more information, please go to the website faithandliberty.org. Hope to see you on April 10th at Ohio Christian University.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. After a short break to hear from our sponsor, Ohio Christian University, we will rejoin our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's guest.
Senator Rick Santorum, Dr. Ben Carson, and Dr. John Maxwell are coming to Ohio Christian University Monday, April 21st at 6 p.m. Get your tickets today at ohiochristian.edu for this riveting event. Tickets are going quickly, so secure yours now at ohiochristian.edu to meet Senator Rick Santorum, Dr. Ben Carson, and Dr. John Maxwell at Ohio Christian University on Monday, April 21st at 6 p.m. Made possible by Millwood Inc., the Computer Workshop, and Christian Healthcare Ministries.
Ohio Christian University is one of the fastest growing universities in the nation, offering undergraduate and graduate degree programs fully online in the areas of business, psychology, chemical dependency counseling, nursing, and ministry. You can earn an accredited, relevant, and affordable online degree, all from the comfort of your home. Now is the time to prepare for your future and earn your degree with Ohio Christian University. Call today at 855-OCU-GRAD or online at ocuonline.com.
You are listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show, where faith and liberty meet. Now, back to the discussion with our host, Dave Garrison, and this week's wonderful guest.
A couple things that I'd like to know, particularly because of my own run for Congress. Even though you lost in the 2012, do you think part of that was because of the Florida redistricting that was directed to try and impact you?
Well, look, I think one of the big questions that has to be answered down here, I can't answer it, is why, the first black Republican since 1876 who covered a district that was 92 to 93% white to include the highest per capita income zip code in the United States of America, Palm Beach Island. Why would, Republicans in a supermajority in the House and the Senate and a Republican governor redistrict that guy out? They got to answer that question.
Yeah, see, I ran into some of that in Texas myself. Two more questions, and then I know you're out of time, and then I'd like to let you go. Are you?
Yes.
And the listeners are going to kill me if I don't ask you. Are you going to run for Congress again, or are you, if Marco Rubio runs for president, going to run for Senate?
Well, it says in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6, trust in the Lord in all thy ways and lean not upon your own understanding, and he will guide and direct your path. So, I write my plans in pencil and give God the eraser. And I think that's the best thing to do. I can't say, exactly where I will be, but the thing is I will be where God intends me to be. I will be in a place where I will continue to serve him and my country. If that means, in the House of Representatives, that means Senate. If that means being the best dog catcher around, whatever, my country and my God, needs from me, that's what I'll do.
Fantastic. The last question, because I found it really curious, and you wrote about it recently, would you tell the listeners about that Trader Joe's controversy that you commented on?
Yeah, it seems up there in Portland, Oregon, Trader Joe's wanted to come into an inner-city black neighborhood and build a store there. And the African-American Leadership Forum, or whatever they call themselves in Portland, did not want them there. And because they said that it would force people that are oppressed out of their community. This is the incredible backward thinking of quote-unquote faux black leaders, that you are never going to be able to turn around the inner city economic situation unless you start to get new businesses that can come in that can get people back to work. When you think about the black unemployment rate, it is double the quote-unquote national unemployment rate, which is not 6.6%. It's closer to 13%. So the black unemployment rate, without a doubt, is probably somewhere between 15 to 20%. Black teenager unemployment rate is close to 40%. We see the families in the black community breaking down, where you have 72% out of wedlock births. So we need to have economic revitalization and capital to reinvest in these inner cities. And the fact that people don't want that, I just find it unconscionable.
Well, I think the letter that you quoted, the forum said something like, we don't want to increase the desirability of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't even explain. Oxymoronic is not a strong enough term.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman, for your time and being on the show. We really appreciate what you're doing for America, especially as a retired USAA top executive. I appreciate your service to the country, and you're a man of God and an honorable American, and thank you for being on our show.
Thanks for having me, and anytime.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
On behalf of our host, Dave Garrison, I'd like to thank you for listening to the Faith and Liberty Talk Show today. For additional information about the show, please go to faithandliberty.org, where you can access previous shows, like us on our Faith and Liberty Facebook page, and access other resources. Please keep in mind that the Faith and Liberty Talk Show exists only with the generosity and support of our listeners. If the show is of value to you, we would appreciate you visiting our website, faithandliberty.org, and donating to the show. The opinions and comments represent the views of our speakers and may or may not represent the views of Ohio Christian University. May God bless you, and thank you for listening to our show.